when someone says something that just rubs you the wrong way at work. Or maybe they didn't even actually say it. Maybe they just gave you a look, or they took the direction of the meeting in a completely different way than you were intending to. And you walked away from that meeting or that email string or that just interaction that you had when your paths crossed in the hallway, feeling like they are trying to work against you. And they're trying to make things harder for you. And then I bet you spend the next 7 hours or the rest of the workday or into the evening, maybe, or maybe even a couple of weeks coming back to that very moment in your mind. Why did he clear his throat like that? Was it in my head that he turned his chair a little bit away from me after I said that? Why did she ask if I am ready for this challenge? Does she think I'm not ready? Does she think I'm not qualified? What did he mean in that email where he said we need to get focused on efficiency? Does he think my team isn't efficient? We can get so easily derailed by these random things that may or may not be true. They might have meant to have that connotation. They might have meant to say the very thing that you're reading into it. But the point here isn't whether or not it was intended, it's how you are responding to it. That smallest comment, that briefest look can send you spiraling for the rest of the day. And let's be honest, it usually isn't just the rest of the workday. It usually does go into the evening. And sometimes it's 7 years later, right? And you're thinking about that one jerk that you worked with at a company that you're no longer working for, and you haven't even actually seen that person in like 4 years. It's kind of like the Doublemint gum commercial, right? You remember that commercial from like 1992 or something? And it's still just randomly popping into your head today. It's like that, except it's this horrible, torturous version of it. And I don't love the Doublemint gum commercial either. So how do we remove these things from our brain? Not the jingles, the torturous moments. Or better yet, how do we make it so that we're not getting stuck in that cycle to begin with? Well, I want to share a story of mine where I maybe fell into that trap just a little bit, maybe fell into that gutter a little bit right along with the rest of us, right? How I got out of it and what you can do, what 3 steps you can take so that you can either avoid these in the future or potentially, if you do fall into that gutter too, you are able to pick yourself back out. So, years ago, I was in my mid 20s, no, late 20s, I guess, and I had just been promoted. It was my first leadership role within the corporate environment. Now, I had been leading people in the past. I had led people in hospitality. I had led teams in food service. I had been leading organizations, clubs all through college, in retail. There were so many different things that I was working in and leading legitimate teams where I was the supervisor, right? And I had also, within this corporate environment, been leading projects, and I had held kind of informal influence roles where I needed to sort of persuade people down a certain path without having that direct control. And as we all know, that can certainly be a challenge, right? But I was coming into this fresh leadership role, this fresh management role, where I knew some things. Certainly, I had things to learn, but I wasn't just starting from scratch. I had a pretty good idea of what I was doing. So I was a little surprised when people just assumed that I didn't know how to get the best work out of my team. And I got a lot of sideways glances. I got a lot of just negative, snarky comments, and none of that really bothered me. I'll be honest, I don't even remember most of them. I remember making jokes about them with my friends. I remember telling my husband, can you believe what this person said today? But it was all with this air of water rolling off of my back, right? I was a complete duck in this situation. And if you are not from rural areas, that just means that the water just rolls right off of them. It's just how you're built, right? I had built this tough exterior that those sort of things, I was just automatically filtering them out in my head. But there was one comment that really hurt. There was one that really did throw me off, and it caused me to spiral for hours. It caused me to probably have an extra glass of wine at dinner. It caused me to talk to my husband about it for about a week, I'm thinking. But I was able to get out of it, and I used the same technique to help me bounce back from that one that was particularly tough that I was using just on the day to day to get through all of those smaller things at the same time. And I want to use that one comment that really did throw me off to help you get out of the ones that might be holding you back, that might be throwing you off your game as well. So I was about 6 months into the job and things were going pretty well. I was managing a few different teams, right? And I had supervisors that were leading those teams and reporting up to me. And then I had one team that was just individual contributors. And I was particularly close to the team of individual contributors because A, I didn't have a supervisor that separated me from them. And B, I had worked with them on this project that was part of the vehicle that got me promoted. So it was a really successful project. And each one of those individuals was integral to that project's success. So we had worked together really closely. It was probably a year or more that we were working together. And I had great rapport with every single person on that team. Now, in that project that we worked with, we were already doing the work. That team was, I should say. We weren't. I wasn't on the team. I was leading the project. So they were already doing the actual work. We just sort of repackaged it in that project so that it could be more impactful and higher profile for all of the departments that we were supporting at that time. And it also meant that while they were truly just doing the same work that they had always done, they were doing it in a little bit different way and with much higher stakes now because it was a higher profile thing. It was something that more people cared about because it had a bigger impact on the business. And so again, about 6 months in, one of them started pulling back, right? Almost the way you see a teenager pull back, right? You know that it's because they just want more control. You know that it's because they want to feel like they have power in the situation when they otherwise feel like it's getting pulled away from them, where they're making the snide comments. You're getting the eye rolls from them. They're showing up late to grandma's birthday party, or they're leaving early just to make a point that they can because they have their license and so they can get out of here. So she was doing the adult work version of that. She was coming into work exactly on time and then sitting at her desk doing her makeup for the first 15 minutes of her shift, right? She was starting to come in late on deadlines. So if something was meant to be done, by the end of the month, she would have it done by the end of the first week of the next month. Close, not on time. And she was also actually leaving early almost every day for what would feel like legitimate reasons, right? So maybe she needed to pick up her kiddo early from daycare. Maybe she needed to leave early to get to her son's Little League game. There were all sorts of things that when they happen on a one-off basis, they feel legitimate. But when they happen one after the other 5 days a week, you start to wonder if someone really has that much going on. And all of that I can work through, right? This is something that I've done for years and that I help clients do all the time. Those are sticky situations, but we can get through those. But then I was putting more accountability in place, right? Because I'm not here to watch the clock and make sure she punches in and out at the right times. So I was putting more accountability in place so that the reports and the results that this team was responsible for were things that they could actually control, and we would just measure against those really objective expectations. And she said one thing when that went into place that just sent me over the edge. She said, "This never was a thing before, but Kelly just throws on a short skirt and bats her eyelashes and gets whatever she wants." Right? Listen to that. There is a lot within that sentence. I put in this accountability, this expectation that was purely objective and about the work that they were doing. And her response was to say to another employee on the team, "This was never a thing before, but Kelly just throws on a short skirt and bats her eyelashes and gets whatever she wants." So my head was reeling on that one, right? So in my head were a bunch of other spiraling thoughts. Things like, I only had to add this process because of her poor work ethic. Does she really need to pick up her daughter every single day? Does everyone think that that's how I get stuff done around here? I don't even own a short skirt. What are they talking about? Am I really flirting my way up? Is that why I got promoted, even if I didn't try to? If she wasn't so lazy, I wouldn't even have to spend my time auditing that work. I would just trust them, right? I would just trust that team if it wasn't for her. She's probably poisoning the team. After all, if she's willing to say this, what else has she said to them? I need to deal with this behavior. This is completely unacceptable. And I am going to have a quick and decisive conversation to nip this in the bud. And if she cannot improve immediately, then she is out. That was my original response. That is how I thought I should handle it, at least in the moment, at least while I was having that second glass of wine, right? And I'm curious, would you have done the same thing, right? If you would, if everything that I just listed off feels like something you would have thought in that moment as well, I want you to add any other thoughts that you have had to the comments. I want to see everything that you would have thought in that spiral moment on your second glass of wine and what you would have come up with. Because the thing is, all of that feels right. It feels justified, right? Even now, years later, I feel justified in what I would have said, in what I was thinking in that moment. But the problem is that it was holding me back. You've maybe heard me say before that the problem is you, right? In any of these situations, the problem is you, the problem is me, and that is the best news ever, because that means that you get to fix it. And that was exactly what I needed to know, because me having these spiraling thoughts, me blaming this situation on her and being caught up in what her perceptions were, what the thoughts of the team were, why I actually got promoted in the first place, that was holding me back from achieving my goals, right? I had this rich vision of what this team could do to impact the business, and we were making it happen. We took this team that was previously thought of as just this nice to have kind of add-on and made it an integral part of the overall business. And so me getting caught up and swept up in that moment and reacting to her comments was just distracting me and holding me back from focusing on the other things that I wanted to do. When I was focused on that, I wasn't bringing in revenue, right? When I was focused on that, I wasn't bringing in this dedicated culture that I wanted for my team. When I was thinking about that, I wasn't building careers for myself and for everyone that I was interacting with. I needed to address how I was approaching this situation so that this challenge just became one more way to achieve our mission. So, what did I do? Yes, I thought about it for a while, but what did I actually do? Because like I said, what I did to get out of this one is the very same thing that I was doing and am continuing to do on a daily basis whenever one of those tiny little roadblocks will, any of those little pebbles along the way, right? Any of those random backhanded compliments, right? Those random backhanded compliments. I just had to do it intentionally with this situation. And I want you to learn how to do it intentionally so that you practice on the little ones, you practice on those backhanded compliments, you practice on those little pebbles along the roadways so that you can build up the muscle to handle the big ones when they come. So there are 3 steps to this, okay? And I am going to walk you through each and every one. So when you get knocked down, when someone says something or does something that makes you start to spiral, I want you to do this first. Keep your eye on the prize. What is the goal? What is the end game? What is it that you want out of this, right? Was my overall goal to make sure that every single employee had a positive view of me? No, it wasn't. Not even a little bit, right? Make everyone like me was never on my bingo card. So, what I wanted was an impactful team that was contributing meaningfully to the business. They were contributing in a significant way. That was my end goal. And once I reminded myself that it was easy to take the spotlight off of that comment, it was easy to take the spotlight off of my feelings, right? I no longer needed to worry about if she thought something bad about me. It just wasn't a big deal because it wasn't about me. So now for you, take a second, pause the video if you need to, but when you think of that comment, because odds are one has been rolling in your head this whole video so far, when you think of that thing that knocked you off your game, consider, what is the end goal? Now, if you are a leader, just going to give you a little hint here, a little tip. The goal is usually not centered around you, right? You might have an overall plan for yourself, for where you're going, but your goals, the things that you're actively working toward on a day-to-day basis, those things are typically outside of you. You are working for the greater good, for the greater purpose. And whether or not, because like I said in the beginning, those people, you don't need to guess at their motives. It doesn't matter. They may be saying it about you. They may be saying it about the objective work that you're doing, but they are coming up when you are working towards that goal. So think about what you are working towards. Take it out of yourself. This is where you get objective and clear on where you're going, right? It's like taking a long road trip. Now, if you don't actually know where you're going on the road trip, you just jump in the vehicle and drive, you're probably going to get derailed, right? You're going to think about like, am I hungry? Do I need something to drink? Are we going to eat lunch out of the cooler in the back of the car, or are we going to find a nice restaurant and just fully relax for a little while? Do we need some time to get some energy out, to go for a walk, all of these things? Now, you will lose 3 hours on your way to your destination because you got sidetracked going in the wrong direction when you're thinking about all of these other little things because you're not thinking about the goal. But when you are crystal clear on where you're going, you're probably still going to stop, right? You're not going to take a road trip where you drive from New York to LA and never stop. But all of your stops are going to be focused around that end goal, around the fact that you are driving truly cross country. Now, all of that to be said, you're probably still going to address some of these comments. You're probably still going to tell that, snarky employee that what they said wasn't appropriate. You're just not going to spend the time there. You're going to get back on course quicker. You're going to get refocused on your goal and make sure you are back in the car, headed in the right direction sooner. Okay? So that's number 1. What is the goal? Keep your eye on the prize. Number 2, you are going to find common ground. Nothing gains alignment faster than gaining agreement on something. Even when the person that you were trying to gain agreement with is completely opposed to you, right? You can have someone say something so rude, right? Like, do you even know what you're talking about? And completely disarm them by aligning with their thought process. Imagine if someone said that to you. Imagine if you are working with someone and they said, do you even know what you're talking about? And you responded with, our time is so short here, Karen. And I agree. I don't want to waste it rehashing things, right? But if there is something specific that you think I'm missing, please don't hesitate to share. Could you imagine if you said that out loud? What would Karen even be able to say to that, right? Nothing. She would have to agree with you. She would have to say, like, yes, I want to make the best use of our time also. And she would have been very clear and direct if there was something that she thought you were missing. And let's be honest, maybe you were. Maybe there was a perspective that you were missing, or that you just weren't highlighting enough. You were downplaying it a little bit. It's possible. And if it wasn't, if her intent really was malicious, she just wouldn't have anything else to say, right? So 9 times out of 10, that person is going to gain respect for you when you respond that way, because you're not matching their energy. They went down, right? They got really angry. They got really frustrated. They tried to pull you down in the muck, and you just gave them a little hand up. They tried to fall down in the gutter, and you were like, no, Karen, let's head up here. Sidewalk, that's a better place for us, right? Karen would have to agree. Sidewalk, better option, right? Even if they don't, even if they want to stay in the gutter, even if they want to continue to be angry and they are not going to build respect for you, every single person in the room that isn't that person will. Every single other person in the room will be delighted that you focused on the goal. They will be delighted that you didn't get in this argument or in this match with that other person about who's smarter and who knows more in that situation. When you have your eye on the prize, even when someone tries to knock you down, you have the ability to find some area of agreement, and you can say, yeah, yes, and let's just move forward. How different would your life feel if that person, that thought that's been rolling around in your head, you just said, okay, I agree that it's important, and let's move forward. So, number 3 is address the situation with the end in mind. So far, this has been inner work and a little bit of gaining agreement, right? So essentially, if we use our sidewalk metaphor, you were walking down the sidewalk, someone pulled you into the gutter. You looked up to get a good view of the coffee shop or cafe that you were actually walking to, right? So you got your eye on the prize. And then you pulled yourself and them out to sit on the edge of the sidewalk so that you were no longer in the gutter, right? You gained agreement with them so that you could pick each other back up. Now it's time to actually get back on track towards the place where you were going, right? Because just sitting on the sidewalk, that's not enough, right? So you take that end goal, the one that you know you wanted, the one that you decided on, and you make another decision of what the next step is towards getting it. Super simple, right? Just what is that next step? Now, a couple of sub-steps here, because this could be a couple of different things, right? So it could be literally having the conversation with that person. Depends on if it's a trend, depends on how they actually approached it, who they were talking to, when it came up, a lot of different factors. The next step to getting you closer to the destination that you're going might be to actually have a conversation with them. However, most often, a direct conversation about the comment, the behavior, the attitude is just taking you off course. It is just rerouting you from that road trip that you intended to take. So it could also be one of two other things. It could be, okay, now that I know we're going here, I need to take step 2 in this 25-step process, right? Like I need to acknowledge the choice that that person made and move on to making my sales calls. Yes, she said something rude, but I am going to continue auditing my files. Yes, he is, ignoring me in meetings, but I am just going to work on clearing my queue. Like you're just moving on to the work. Be so good that they can't stop you, right? It might be, and this one is actually the most frequent, is really gaining alignment on the cause. So we got alignment on like a point of agreement, right? We got alignment on like one thing to just sort of raise our head out of the gutter. But that conversation, instead of addressing the comment, instead of addressing the attitude or the behavior, whatever it was, that conversation is probably bringing that person and any other stakeholder together to realign on what the end goal is and why. Why are you creating the new process? What is the benefit of installing this new system or integrating all of these new systems, right? What would our customers or our employees get out of making this the most amazing summer picnic possible? You end up re-energizing those people. Yes, maybe the one snarky one, sure, they might need a little bit more energy, but everyone else who could be indirectly impacted by it. So back to my story with Snarky Snarkerton that was working for me at the time, right? After I spiraled for a minute or two or a day or two about what she was saying, I reminded myself that the goal was to create an impactful program that benefited the business. That was the goal. My common ground with her was that I had no interest in adding process for process sake, right? I wasn't doing this because I wanted to. I sought to empower the team to make an impact. And I addressed the situation in my next team huddle, so with her and her peers, and then in each department meeting that my team was leading. I used this as essentially the opener because there just was a lot going on and there were a lot of different people that were impacted by it. So I want to share what I said, and hopefully you can use this as somewhat of a blueprint, since this really is the most common way to address these situations in a really productive and healthy way. Okay, so I said, I acknowledge that there has been a ton of change and about 2 years of project work in addition to day-to-day work. And that level of effort, it just makes everyone tired. And when we're tired, we don't always show up as our best, right? It's at times like this that we need to remember that the goal is to empower every team member and department to focus on results and make the biggest impact that they can, so that each of us can keep our main thing the main thing. And each new process, it just runs through this filter of, does this give people the freedom to focus on their best work? And if the answer to that is yes, we move ahead. So things like spot audits allow us to measure results regardless of if you are working 10 hours of overtime every week or if you're leaving early every single day. If we can get great results working 30 hours a week, then I am all in, and I would bet that you are too. But if you run a change through the filter, so to speak, and you think, no, it doesn't fit, then I need you to reach out and to tell me directly. Now, that statement that I just shared with you, that's a framework. And it does just roll off of my tongue. It is just natural for me to put all of those pieces together in that order to help people move forward, to give them not just motivation, but to really sell them on what is in it for them to move the ball, to get with the program, to stay on the wagon with me. And it's not difficult at all for me to put these things in those terms, right? That's because I've been in this practice for years. I have this automatic filter that every sideways glance goes through, you know. It's not about me anymore. My eyes on the prize. I am gaining agreement with them. Yes, we've been doing this for a long time. Yes, we're all tired. And now we can take steps forward. This is something that I do, that I help my past clients do, that allows all of them to get back on track in the direction of that road trip destination, right? We are making it to LA in record time because we're not doing all of these little side quests on the way. We are continuing to stay focused. But it doesn't just happen because you wrote down the steps. It doesn't just happen because you paused the video and took notes on how I structured that together. It's something that you need to practice. It's something that you need to put into play every single day. All of this communication, all of this leadership, all of this strategic thinking, it is a muscle that you have to build, right? So I called it a muscle earlier on in the video, and I need you to think of it that way. This is strength training for your mind. And if you've done, work with a trainer in the past, you know that you start out practicing your form with small weights, right? You use a 2-pound weight or a 5-pound weight, and you practice the perfect bicep curl. And you do it the exact same way with that low weight, so that you're not worried about the weight. You're thinking about the form. You're thinking about how you are doing the work. And you do that same practice with that light weight until you kind of can't do it wrong, right? It's so ingrained in you that you naturally do it right. And then you pick up the 10-pound weight, then you pick up the 15-pound weight or more, because you're so practiced. That sure, that bigger weight might take a little bit of thought. It might take a little more effort, but you can handle it because now the form is just second nature with you. You have learned how to do it with the small things, so that when you have to think through it a little bit more on the big things, it's not that hard. It's something that you have muscle memory on, and your brain can just go back to that old habit and say, this is how we do this. This is how we get out of this gutter and get back on this sidewalk so that we can get where we want to go. So take these steps, apply them to the example that has been rolling around in your mind, right? The one that you have been thinking about this whole video that happened to you. Put these steps in place. Decide what is the next step for you, and then try it. Put it into practice. And if you want to put this into practice with me, then I am all ears. There is a link below where you can just book time with me. And I would love to hear how you are addressing that issue that has been rolling around in your brain, and how you plan to take that next step forward. All right. I will see you in the next one, and I hope to hear from you even before then.